All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the February 23rd, 2021 meeting of the Community Development and Human Services Committee. My name is Matt Westmoreland. I serve as chair of this body. We are joined today by Council President Felicia Moore, Council members Dustin Hillis, Carla Smith, Joy Shepard, Madeline Archibong, and we'll be joined later on, I believe, by Michael Julian Bond and Antonio Brown. Ms. Polandini, will you kick us off with the remote meeting statement, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. This Community Development Human Services Committee meeting is being conducted remotely as advertised and as in accordance with OCGA 50-14-1. The meeting will be conducted in conformance with Robert's Rules of Order and the Rules of Council as authorized by the City Code. The public may access the meeting by dialing 877-579-6743, conference ID 831-599-1256, which was noted on the February 19, 2021 public meeting notice. Public may also view the meeting on Channel 26, the Council's homepage at citycouncil.atlantagA.gov, the Council's YouTube channel, or the Council's Facebook and Twitter pages via @ATL Council. All presentations are available on the Atlanta City Council Community Development Human Services Committee presentation page. The agenda was published and made available on February 19, 2021 via atlantacitygA.iqm2.com. In addition, the public was able to submit comments via voicemail at 404-330-6089 between the hours of 4 and 7 p.m. the day before this meeting. All persons present on the remote council meeting conference bridge are requested to mute your phones and its speakers. Additionally, speakers must be acknowledged by the presiding officer prior to speaking. Each council member is requested to open your Outlook email and minimize the screen. Amendments, substitutes, and informational documents have been distributed to committee members beforehand. Thank you all in advance for your cooperation.
Thank you much. Colleagues, next on our agenda is the adoption of it. I will make a motion to adopt as outlined. Is there a second?
Second, Brown.
Got it. So motion by Westmoreland, second by Brown, by whom we have been joined, as we have Michael Julian Bond. Will you please open that vote?
One moment, please.
All right, Mr. Bond, how would you like to vote?
Aye.
Thank you.
And the vote is closed.
7 yeas, 0 nays. The agenda is adopted. I will make a motion to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Westmoreland, second by Bond. Please open that vote.
I'm a yay, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
The vote is open. Vote is closed.
7 yeas, 0 nays. The minutes are approved. Next up, Mr. Massenberg, I believe we have 11 comments totaling 26 minutes. Will you play those for us, please?
Hi, this is Nathan Club, a resident of Ormwood Park. I'm just calling in reference to the impact fee updates. I'm really excited y'all are going through and doing a comprehensive update. I want to echo a concern I had while reading through the proposed update that I heard Council member Westmoreland also bring up, which is I think we should have a variable, not a set rate for single-family housing developments. If we're kind of concerned from an equity standpoint, we should be, charging smaller house developments that we're trying to encourage be smaller and more affordable for more people. We should have that at a reduced rate for the impact fees. The second thing I wanted to bring up, which is more related to transparency on impact fees, is I think along with this, as we'll be having more impact fees coming through the city, there needs to be some sort of web portal set up where residents can track projects that are set to be funded by impact fees, the revenues coming in from impact fees, projects that are being completed by impact fees, the proposed costs for both completed projects and those plans. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Michael Harvey. I run an Airbnb out of my basement over in Grant Park, and I also, my wife and I, we also help other people design and manage their properties throughout the city. Some of you guys might not know me, some of you guys might not, but I actually was able to recently quit my job, and both my wife and I are doing full-time property management and designing and just basically helping others kind of, replicate the success we've had with our own basement apartment. But one of the things that's really cool about Airbnb that's not talked about a lot is the expansive economy that Airbnb creates, and I've been able to see it firsthand as I've grown. All of my contractors and the people I work with have also been growing. And what's kind of crazy is it's a lot of people that are, who may not have been kind of left behind by, other types of employers or other types of employment. Airbnb is allowing them to, empower themselves and be their own boss and start their own company. For example, one of my handyman who lives down the street from me, I'd pick him up and drop him off. He didn't have a bank account or a car or a driver's license, and he's helping me out with all these amazing handyman stuff. And in between, we're able to talk about how to sign up for a bank account that doesn't have fees, how to pay your taxes. A lot of these people are entrepreneurs, so they're responsible for coming up with their own payments to the IRS. So I can kind of help them out with that. But it's been really cool because I've just seen people just create their own businesses out of nothing. It's all just starting with Airbnb. We've got 3 generations of folks that are helping out with electrical and contracting work that are driving here from Griffin, Georgia every day just to do, help fix some of these houses that we're working on. And it's pretty cool seeing 3 generations of people, and it's kind of amazing to see the diversity too. I'm the only white person of all my investors, all my contractors. So it's refreshing to be working with a group of people that reflects the diversity in Atlanta. And like I said, I recently left my corporate job, and one of the things I really liked about my corporate job was just the incredible diversity of people and talent that I worked with. But I'm saying that that diversity and talent, it's everywhere. But thanks for listening to my message. And you guys, if you ever have any questions about what I'm doing, feel free to give me a call at 678-64. Take care, guys. I am Brother Anthony Muhammad. I am a spiritual man. Simply saying, I call on Community Development Human Resource Committee men and the chairman to allow yourself to be in Brother Muhammad. So allow your own soul to listen to what I have to say. We are people of energy. We are not physical. 99.99% is energy, like electricity. That's what we are. We're an example of electricity. You can't mix it, electricity with anything not conducive to electricity. It would not work. So I ask you this. Community Development Human Resource Committee, members of this committee, there are members that have said, Brother Muhammad, what is it we can do? We just became a new person representing the City Council. Mr. Westmoreland just spoke and said that. Mr. Jabbarki said that. Ms. I said that as she was chairman of Council on Committee, and Mrs. Jabbarki and Westmoreland joined the Community Development and Human Resource Committee. As the chairman, I think he was a assistant chairman. I have a problem with a community member that lives in this overseas district have a sewer problem, a sewer that is contaminating, coming up out of the ground literally as I speak onto another person's property, backing up, going down a free-flowing stream. We have ordinance in this city, ordinance that say you can't put nothing in free-flowing stream areas. That's a violation of the orders of the city language and watershed management. But I have had even the deputy commissioner to give a letter recognizing the problem with the sewer of those that are not connected to the city. But I ask you, what is it that we have to do to get the city to aid in the problem with a senior that cannot afford to fix it or not wanting to fix it or not having no way to get resolution so we don't have to continue to suffer with this pandemic with water sewage coming out of the ground, flowing down into a stream. What is it that you, member council of Atlanta, can do for the interest of 2021 to show that you are willing to stand with these carbonated people who are the majority people of the city of Atlanta? Ms. Keisha, I've asked you. I asked your office. I'm going to return the call. I've talked to Ms. Overstreet over a year to try to aid and help this woman get resolution to a sewer problem. What is it that we have to do who are not economic empowered like some, as I said, we're not economic empowered like you and your friends and associates that you have in the city of Atlanta? Find a way to help this woman have resolution to her sewer problem. Brother Anthony Muhammad, hotel, and say,
greetings to you, council members and staff, and special greetings to you, citizens and voters of Atlanta, watching and or listening to your government in action, and taking note about how comments from the public are being treated by our elected officials. Ben Howard, senior advocate, public policy analyst. On the average, fewer than 1% of eligible citizens, senior citizen stakeholders, attend neighborhood planning UR meetings now being held virtually. With Antonita Robinson as the 21 Vice Chair of NPUR and Mick Harlow Jacobs and Colas Clare pulling strings in the background, the concerns of NPUR citizens are still being ignored. So where were you, NPUR 9, while residents of Atlanta Housing Authority properties were seeking a way to become involved in the selection of the two persons who now serve as resident commissioners on the Atlanta Housing Authority Board of Directors, supposedly representing thousands of other AHA residents in need of serious and outspoken representation? So where are you, NPUR 9, while NPUR residents are wondering when and how the coronavirus vaccine will trickle down to them in their communities? Where are you now while residents are trying to find out what will happen to renters once the moratorium on evictions is lifted and landlords start putting people and their properties out onto the streets? Where are you now, NPUR 9, while NPUR residents are still trying to understand why senior citizens and disabled persons are not receiving notices of NPUR meetings? Where are you now, NPUR 9, while the Public Safety Committee of APAB, the Atlanta Planning Advisory Board, is having meetings on the fourth Thursday of each month to deal with crime in these areas? How are you, NPUR 9, and where are you, NPUR 9, while rents are skyrocketing and affordable housing for senior citizens is becoming scarcer? Come out from behind the scenes, you NPUR 9. Stand up, speak out, and help address some of the concerns of the residents and stakeholders of Neighborhood Planning Unit R. Vice Chair Antonita Robinson, you call us Claire, Ricardo Jacobs, Alfred White, Manette L. Scott, Allison Hathaway, Sherry Williams, and you other NPUR 9 cohorts, supporters, and enablers.
Hi, my name is Lena Jefferson, and I live in the Asheville Heights neighborhood. I'm a cleaner for an Airbnb in my neighborhood, and there's a couple of them in my neighborhood, but this one particular one I clean for. I just like to say there has not been any problems with our Airbnb in our neighborhood because we have a website. And if there's any problems, it's reported. So to my knowledge, there has not been any reports or anything regarding the Airbnb. And I'm just calling to say that the one that I work for, and it's right down the street from where I live, very nice, very clean. And I go over there, pass by there sometimes in the evening when there's clients there. Never had a problem. There's no problem. And as I stated before, if there were problems, our neighborhood association has a website and it would be reported. So that is my comment concerning the Airbnb and the clients. And no one, my other neighbors have never complained about our Airbnbs in this neighborhood. So thank you very much. Once again, my name is Nina Jefferson. I'm a cleaner for an Airbnb, and I know of several in our area. So thank you for allowing me to send you this message.
Even unto the Spirit of Christ, my name is Henri Jordan. Likewise, ye husbands, dwell with them according to knowledge, giving honor unto the wife as unto the weaker vessel, and as being heirs together of the grace of life. That your prayers be not hindered. 1 Peter 3rd chapter 7th verse. The Greek word rendered love is agapeo, which denotes the willing sacrificial giving on the husband part for the benefit of his wife without thought of return. Dan Montgomery is not an example to help men be a Christ-like husband is the reason Jesus said, I can't marry him. The getting of treasure by a lying tongue is a vanity tossed to and fro of them that seek death. Proverbs 21st chapter 6th verse. Therefore they will experience destruction because they themselves will be deceived by their own teaching and continue to reject the way of truth. Dan Montgomery, if you take credit for what the work Jesus has done in me, then you ask for death because the Bible said so. And if by grace, then it is no more of works. Otherwise, grace is no more grace. But if it be of works, then it's no more grace. Otherwise, work is no more work. Romans 11th chapter, 6th verse. This deal with national and not individual destiny and is a strong argument to show that God has not terminated his program for Israel. For thus said the Lord that created the heavens, God himself that formed the earth and made it. He had established it. He created it not in vain. He formed it to be inhabited. I am the Lord, and there is none else. Isaiah 45th chapter, 18th verse. God, the Lord, is pictured as the creator and in the heavens, and stretched them out and spread forth the earth. God is all powerful. We are not and cannot be. That's why we need Christ more than he needs us. That's a blessing for us to lift him up. Thank you and obey Jesus. Christ-like men and women, children, family, job. Because Christ has true peace. We need his peace.
Hi, my name is Sarah Gleason. I am calling about the short-term rental legislation. I'm an Airbnb host in Candler Park, and I have a triplex. I have 2 apartments I rent out on Airbnb, and I live in one of the apartments with my 4 children and my husband. We would not be able to live in Candler Park if it wasn't for the income coming from the Airbnbs. And my children wouldn't be able to go to the great school in that neighborhood as we couldn't live in that neighborhood. So the Airbnbs have provided my family with a better life and income for us to live. And a ban on the short-term rentals would make us have to sell the house. So I just wanted to let you know about my story and how we contribute to the neighborhood with our Airbnbs. A lot of the people who stay with us are visiting family and friends in the neighborhood. A lot of them don't have cars that they bring, so they walk up to the local market and local restaurants. And I think it's been an added value to our neighbors. In the 4 years I've been doing it, I have never had a complaint. If I did have a complaint from a neighbor, I'd be very receptive for them to come talk to me, and I'd make changes. I'm try to be very courteous of neighbors, but my guests follow the rules. They aren't loud after 10. They park where they're supposed to. So I just really think this new legislation is fair, and I'd be happy to get a permit and follow all the rules. But I just really, really hope you guys don't ban short-term rentals in the city of Atlanta. I think it would give people like me a real disadvantage who are just trying to get good education for our kids and live in nice neighborhoods and get an income for our families. And I think it would just be a real blow to us, especially after coronavirus, when we've lost a lot of bookings and we're just getting back on our feet from that. And I really appreciate you guys taking the time to hear my comments. And thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Philip Kelly. I'm a volunteer with the Housing Justice League. I'm calling because I understand the city and its partners are supposed to present an action plan to your committee by the end of April for development of affordable housing on public land. And I'm a volunteer with the Housing Justice League, so I want to specifically urge you, the committee, but particularly you tasked, such as the COO and the partners who are crafting this plan, to follow through on the commitment that everyone has signed on to with the One Atlanta Housing Affordability Action Plan, which states that you will engage hard-to-reach groups, engage a broad and diverse array of residents, and ensure their voices are heard regularly, especially those community members most at risk of displacement or facing their own housing affordability challenges. Housing Justice League is gladly able to offer help with engaging the community and offer insight into how this plan is shaped to reflect the true needs of the people of Atlanta who are most affected by the lack of affordable housing in the city. So again, referencing the One Atlanta Housing Affordability Action Plan, this is Initiative 13 on page 39. It talks about building and expanding on methods to develop holistic, all-inclusive community engagement. So I definitely want to make sure that that's incorporated into this plan. Based on the resolution, it looks like it's very technocratic, and it's going to set the path forward. But I do not see in the resolution what community engagement will look like, even just creating this path. So I would love to hear comments from council members. I missed the meeting when it was crafted and passed. So because it's not in the language, I hope we can offer some sort of official clarification on that. And again, want to see that outreach happen before the April 27th deadline for the plan to be presented. And so you can just go to Housing Justice League to get in contact with us. But there are a number of different ways to make sure that this has robust community engagement. So thank you so much and have a good day.
Good afternoon. My name is Kate Little, and I work for Georgia Stand Up, a Think and Act tank. I live in Belmont Hills. I am calling to request that the CDHS committee instruct the agencies charged with developing a plan for affordable workforce and supportive housing on vacant publicly owned land include a process for community engagement. At the January 12th meeting, the committee approved a resolution requesting the Chief Operating Officer coordinate with the Department of City Planning, Invest Atlanta, the Atlanta Beltline, Atlanta Housing, and the Atlanta Fulton County Land Bank to create a comprehensive action-based plan to expedite the development of such housing on vacant publicly owned land. In preparing that plan, we asked that those agencies be instructed to engage with marginalized communities to give residents a seat at the table to raise their voices and concerns. The city agency should make a concerted effort to engage with hard-to-reach groups who do not often have the opportunity to participate. The engagement process should also involve community organizations, including nonprofit housing developers. Such a community engagement process would advance transparency, racial equity, and accountability, and most importantly, improve the chances that the plan meets the needs of those city residents who have limited income. Again, we urge the CDHS committee to require some community engagement before the COO turns over a community plan, a housing plan, to the CDHS committee by April 27th. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dare Tran, and I've been an Airbnb host in Atlanta for the past 8 months. I'm calling to share my experience with you and encourage the city of Atlanta to take reasonable measures towards creating a sustainable regulatory solution for hosts, guests, and all Atlanta residents. A complete ban or overbearing regulations on short-term rentals creates a stressful environment for all parties and represents anti-free market behavior that hurts travelers, hosts, and the city of Atlanta. Short-term rentals provide a variety of benefits to various parties, including the following. The first group is travelers and guests. We've hosted over 40 individuals at our Airbnb. These travelers have included frontline workers like nurses and older guests who are not comfortable staying in a large hotel. These guests are looking for an economical option that lowers their risk of contracting COVID. And they chose our home because it provided them with a contactless check-in, a completely separate living space, and a ventilation system dedicated to the space they were occupying. Additionally, it was a great value compared to hotels where they would have been significantly more likely to be exposed to other people. The second group is the city of Atlanta. At our current occupancy rate, our short-term rental is going to raise thousands of dollars each year in local and state taxes, which Airbnb processes at the time of booking. We're also taxed on any income generated by our rental, which we pay when we file our personal tax return. Furthermore, last week, Airbnb publicized their intent to bring a tech hub and hundreds of high-paying jobs to Atlanta. Airbnb has shown an interest in investing in the city of Atlanta and creating jobs for the residents here. We need to partner with the companies that are interested in investing in our community and find sustainable ways to work with them going forward. The last group is hosts. Airbnb provides a platform for hosts like me and my husband to generate income on unused space in their home. We have a first baby on the way, and she's due in May, and we've used the proceeds from our rented space to help finance the expense of preparing to be new parents. Additionally, that extra income gives us the flexibility to afford doing things that we enjoy, like eating out at local restaurants near our home. We strongly encourage our elected officials to pursue reasonable regulations and find a sustainable solution for short-term rental travelers and Atlanta residents. We hope any ban or overbearing regulations are taken off the table during this process. Additionally, we hope to see our city officials partner closely with companies like Airbnb who are investing in our city, providing safer alternatives for all travelers to generate extra income to do things like start a family. Thanks for listening to my comments.
My name is Natalie Colbert, and I'd like to submit a comment concerning short-term rentals through Airbnb. I have a home in the Florida Heights neighborhood, and it is the home of my parents. They built the home in 1960 and raised my brother and me. It's the home where my father, a postal worker, put in hard work to repair and maintain, and where my mother gave us a strong spiritual foundation. It's the home where my husband and I temporarily lived with my parents as young adults, working as teachers for the Atlanta Public Schools. To me, this home carries the legacy of my parents and their generation, and as one of the many homes in Atlanta owned by African-American families. Now I share this home with guests through Airbnb, and this adapted use brings me joy and the opportunity to share my parents' legacy with these visitors. Renting on a short-term basis gives me flexibility that I need to earn money to maintain the home while being able to enjoy the home with my family when I want. Also, can host visitors in town for vacations, family reunions, crew members working on films, family graduations, HBCU graduations, etc. It also has given me the ability to retain a generational home in an increasingly changing city and one day pass down this important part of my family history to my children. Stories like my family's history are often untold, and that's the beauty of home sharing. Our leaders have discussed regulating short-term rentals over the last few years. Today, I'm encouraged by a current proposal that would require short-term rentals to pay a $150 certificate fee, collect hotel, motel taxes from our guests, and provide 24-hour contact information should guests, neighbors, or others need to reach them. Additionally, the proposal includes a 3-strike system to warn and penalize any irresponsible operators. These are sensible rules that will allow families like mine to own and operate short-term rentals while helping to ensure that the city can track STRs, receive important tax revenue, and address my bad actors. Protect home sharing in Atlanta. All residents deserve a viable way to make meaningful income to retain our homes and properties. I urge the community, city council members, and Mayor Bottoms to protect home sharing in Atlanta by supporting this reasonable proposal and allow families like me to retain. Thank you for your support of short-term rentals on Airbnb and allowing families like myself to keep generational homes in the families and in the neighborhoods. Thank you.
All right. Thank you to the members of the public for reaching out with your thoughts for this week's meeting. Next up, colleagues, is presentations and reports and updates. And the first one of those is going to come from Commissioner Dargle and his team from the Department of Parks and Recreation. Commissioner, are you there?
Hi, Chairman Westmoreland. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir, we can. It's good to hear you.
You too. Thank you. Good afternoon. I am John Dargle. I'm your City of Atlanta Parks and Recreation Commissioner. Joining me today is Director of Recreation Services, Ramondo Davidson, and our Park Operations Director, Doug Voss. I appreciate their continued support and recognize the extraordinary work their team members do on a daily basis to accomplish our mission. If you can go to the next slide. Chairman Westmoreland and council members, thank you for giving us the opportunity to provide a brief quarterly update. Today we'll share an update on our learning pods, tennis services, golf and aquatics programs, park operations, upcoming and ongoing projects, and our Activate ATL Recreation and Parks for All comprehensive Parks and Recreation Master Plan approach. With that, I will pass it over to Ramondo Davidson. Ramondo?
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Okay, I'll be giving you, I'm Ramondo Davidson. I'm the Director of Recreation for the City of Atlanta, and I'll be giving a brief update on our learning pods. And so this first slide represents some of the steps that the Office of Recreation has taken since we started our learning pods back in September of 2020. So we basically took some safety measures to ensure that our staff and all of our participants and parents were safe every day. And some of the items that are listed on this slide represent some of the steps we've taken. We've purchased disinfectant sprayers, social distance signage, contactless thermometers, and we have a 1-to-5 ratio for our proctor to student. We've also had the opportunity to provide all of our students with their own individual learning devices so that there are no shared devices within our learning pods. And we've also been able to provide an additional 350 devices to Atlanta residents who use our devices at home. Next slide, please. On our next slide, this slide represents the locations that we're providing the learning pods. We're providing services at 17 locations throughout the city of Atlanta, and they're listed here. Next slide, please. This third slide represents our partnership with APS and Gooder. So back when we started the learning pods, we had the opportunity to partner with Atlanta Public Schools to provide breakfast and lunch for all 17 of our learning pods from the time that we started our learning pods last year through the remainder of the school year 2021. These meals are provided at all 17 locations 5 days a week. We've also been fortunate to partner with Gooder, who since February of this year has agreed to provide snacks for all of our participants within our learning pods through the remainder of this school year. And as you can see below, the total number of meals we've served to date are 2,538 meals and 318 snacks. Next slide, please. This slide represents our tennis operation. As you all may know, as of August of 2020, the Office of Recreation resumed management of our tennis operation. And these are some of the things that we've done to help to upgrade and to beautify our tennis locations at all 5 of our locations. At Washington Park, we were able to clear all of the overgrowth on all of the tennis courts as well as pressure washing. At Piedmont Park, we repaired all of the existing fencing that was damaged as well as pressure washing. McGee, we did a complete makeover of all of our tennis courts. In addition, we also did pressure washing. Bishop Grant, we're in the process of renovating all of our clay courts and our lighting systems at that location. And at Chastain, we've done some additional pressure washing. We've also incorporated our courts application system, which is a same-day advanced registration system so that our patrons are able to make their request online, it creates a very safe registration process. And then we've also been fortunate to be able to hire some additional customer service representatives to help support the tennis operation. Our hours of operation have been slightly modified, but nothing that would affect our day-to-day. And to date, we've been able to offer 5,292 reservations. And with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Doug Voss.
Thanks, Armando, and good afternoon, Chairman Westmoreland and members of council. This is Doug Voss, Director of Parks. Julia, if you can go ahead and move to the next slide. I'd like to continue with an update on a few additional services as well as a few parks and park design projects since our last quarterly report. DPR continues to offer outstanding golf services at Candler, Browns Mill, Alfred Tupp Homes, and Chastain Park golf courses. Although golf is following COVID protocols, including providing more space between tee times, reducing the total number of riders per cart, keeping the clubhouses closed, and implementing a prepayment system, courses have had almost 77,000 rounds played in the first 7 months of this fiscal year through January. That's actually 4,000 more rounds that were played this year than in the same 7-month period before the pandemic. So definitely wanted to acknowledge golf's continued success even in these times. Also, we wanted to give you an update on our lap swim program that's being conducted out of 4 indoor pools by appointment. Since September 20th, we have had an average of 1,950 visits per month at the 4 centers combined. The C.T. Martin facility has been closed for the past several weeks to allow for extensive regrouting and caulking of the deck and pool tiles and maintenance to the bulkhead. And the pool is actually scheduled to reopen this coming Monday, March 1st. This is an important life cycle maintenance effort, and it should ensure that this fantastic facility will continue for many years to come. Julie, if you can move to the next slide. We mentioned during our last quarterly report that we had noticed an increase in use at all of our parks throughout the year. During the past several weeks, as a result of data collected during our Activate ATL Parks Master Plan process, we were actually able to validate what we saw occurring both statistically and online. 84% of residents on the statistically valid survey and 97% of residents on the online survey expressed that they had visited a park and recreation facility in the past year. And that's compared to a national average of about 77%. Atlanta's truly love their green space, and it's important that we maintain them to our standards. To that end, we are currently hiring for about 70 seasonal staff in the Park Maintenance Operations Division. We do this every year to assist with the mowing season. And I want to thank Commissioner Norman and the HR Talent Acquisition team for all their support in this effort. We have already hired or in the process of hiring about half of those individuals, but we encourage anyone who may be interested to go to the City of Atlanta website If you or someone you know might be interested, we do teach and train. And although it's great, you do not have to have prior experience in grounds maintenance at this time. So we really look forward to another good season. If you go to the next slide, Julia. At this time, I also wanted to provide a quick update on a number of projects since our last update. First, Cook Park. It continues to progress. All amenities have been or are currently being completed, including the pond fountains, benches and picnic tables, exercise equipment, and the courts. Work is being conducted on the drainage systems at the Elm and Berman side of the park, and punch-out will be scheduled once that is completed. This slide shows the new basketball and multi-purpose court. It really came out very, very well. Walkways, the climbing boulder, and the playground, which I know many of y'all have probably seen by just driving by the site. Next slide, Julia. This slide actually has to do with Lake Charlotte. As the recent article states, one of Atlanta's largest remaining forests has been saved. Currently, clean and green and invasive removal projects have been authorized or initiated at Lake Charlotte. The first area of invasive removal clearance is focused near what will be the main entrance to the forest. Work actually started last Monday and will continue along many of the main trails first. Debris removal, including the removal of many discarded tires and the removal of the homestead structures, is expected to start in March, weather permitting. An archaeological survey of the site was also completed, and we hope to have that final report in the upcoming weeks. My understanding is that was very productive and very interesting, so looking forward to that. Once clean and green is complete, we have signage already ready to be installed, and we are looking to open access points to the public this summer. Next slide, Julia. Construction at Westside Park continues. Current construction includes work on the Great Lawn areas, multiple restroom facilities, and 4 miles of walking trails, which will connect to the parking spaces for 450. The Birth of Atlanta artwork installation is complete, and the artwork overlook area. This is an active construction site with major construction elements scheduled to be completed also by this summer. And the pictures on the slide include one of the entry signs, a comparison slide of the amount of water storage that's available within the reservoir itself, some of the walking trails and the Great Lawn areas, and one of the restroom pavilion amenities. Next slide, Julia. We do want to update on a few other projects that have just been completed or beginning the design stage, many in conjunction with the many community partners and partner agencies that work in collaboration with DPR, including Park Pride, who announced their legacy and community grants in January that will benefit 15 Atlanta parks. This slide highlights a few of the current projects, including the installation of a very unique bench commemorating the Reverend James Orange, the newly completed ADA accessible route at Mosley Park, new exercise equipment at Anderson Park, the new playground at Knight Park, and a schematic of the new walkway at Lang Carson, which also connects to a park called Manigault Park, which is in the permitting process. These are only a few of the many projects currently in progress or recently completed. Some of the other ones, just to mention a few, erosion control project at Freedom Dog Park. I was out there this morning, and that is coming along very well. The green infrastructure project at Dean Rusk Park, and the completion of the new Churchline Trail with the path and Atlanta Beltline. So there's just been a lot going on the last quarter, and we're looking forward to the spring. Finally, Julie, if you'll go to the next slide. During the last quarter, DPR has continued to work with our partners in the Office of Cultural Affairs to bring unique offerings to the city of Atlanta. This picture is actually an aerial view of a temporary art installation made from all organic materials in Freedom Park in January. And just recently, DPR and Trees Atlanta also partnered to establish the John Lewis Flowering Forest, planting ornamental trees in Freedom Park. And that project actually started just this weekend in Freedom Park. So with that, thank you for the opportunity to provide this quarterly update, and I will return the presentation back to Commissioner Dargle.
Thank you, Doug. Great projects across the board. I appreciate all the work that not only your staff does, but also our friends and partners as well. So if you go to the last slide, the last slide is our Parks and Recreation Master Plan, which we've called Activate ATL. This is a comprehensive Parks and Recreation System plan that provides recommendations for provision of facilities, programs and services, parkland acquisition and development, maintenance and operations, and administration and management. The plan will be officially adopted by the mayor and city council, updated periodically, and linked with a capital improvement budget and a phased development program. This slide details the approach that the project team has used to come up with the Activate ATL plan. The first step in the process was to figure out where the system is now and to set a baseline of quality in services and facilities and determine the existing conditions. Many of you have already seen this approach. Last summer, we embarked on an extensive first wave of public engagement to hear about residents' needs and priorities from Atlantans of all backgrounds and zip codes. Our team also worked on reviewing our own plans and those of other city agencies to ensure that the Activate ATL is well aligned across the city. We also evaluate our existing park and recreation conditions. We also came to you to learn more about your needs and priorities. Some of you may have been involved or participated in the first round of virtual public meetings. Currently, we're finishing up a second round of virtual public meetings and a number of focus group meetings. We are now beginning to finalize a long-range vision, which will include not only strategies and actions, but also implementation and funding proposals. We hope you will sign up for a monthly newsletter at activate-atl.com to stay updated with all the new planning developments along the way. Currently, we're about right in the middle of this process in the long-range vision phase, which is a combination of what we've learned from the existing conditions analysis as well as the needs and priorities assessment. Based on that, we will work with staff and stakeholders to create a response to those needs and priorities, leading to a draft long-range vision. We appreciate getting your support and your input with staff and stakeholders, and we'll continue to adjust the vision as we develop the final master plan by this summer. Next slide. That concludes our update. If you should have any questions, we're here to answer them.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, and to Mr. Davidson and Mr. Voss. First question, or first person in the queue is Councilman Hillis.
Thank you, Chair. Chairperson Westmoreland. Thank you, Commissioner Dargle and others for the presentation. My first question is give a small update on Westside Park. Haven't heard a lot of communication about the opening date. Seems to be a moving target. Is there a specific opening time frame or date that's been identified yet?
Yes, we'll look at, depending on whether completing phase one by June or July of this year.
Okay. The other question I had, and Commissioner, you weren't, I think you were involved in some early talks, but a lot of talks happened when you were away. I'm very interested in rehabilitating Gun Club Park. I know there may be some environmental issues there, but I think a great start would certainly be removing a lot of illegal dumping that's over there, and doing an invasive removal program. I mean, we're talking about the 40 to 50 acres of mixed hardwood forest, and I think I speak for a lot of people in the community where we'd like to see that space reactivated. So do you have any feedback on that?
I totally agree with you on that one, Councilmember Hillis. And as you know, we've pulled together a number of different agencies within the city, as well as the Trust for Public Land, to look at re-engaging, equally develop that area to include the Gun Club Park, reactivate parkland there, as well as looking at opportunities for housing, economic development, transportation, much like the same approach that we're taking with the West Side. So as we finish up with the West Side Park, I think we want to re-engage this year with Gun Club, as those conversations will continue with the Trust for Public Land to assist us in that.
All right, Commissioner, I appreciate that update. And that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. Colleagues, any other questions or comments? Yes, we do. Ms. Shepherd.
Commissioner Dargle, good to hear from you. I saw where y'all are doing tennis courts in major tennis areas, but what about smaller tennis courts that are in our community, like, for instance, Perkison Park? We need some upgrades to the tennis court at Perkison Park. Is that something that's on your radar also?
I'm not quite sure about the capital repair replacements of Perkison, but I can find out if we have that on our plan. And that's one of the things that we put in through the third-party tennis services provider or proponent to not only look at those 5 tennis centers and providing management programs and services in those 5 tennis centers, but also system-wide. If we can get some of the places that are outside of the tennis centers and how we can program and activate tennis courts throughout the Parks and Recreation system, that would be our intentions. So I'll follow up with you with any improvements. But Doug, you know offhand improvements.
I do. And Councilmember Shepherd, we've actually received the first quotes. We're receiving multiple quotes for that project, but we anticipate having that. That is the one that we anticipate starting this spring. Generally in Atlanta, we start resurfacing courts after March when the weather in the evenings warms up, but that is one on the list already.
Okay, if you could get with me and go over this court, because we have some lighting problems at that court also, so I don't know how extensive your project is, but it's not just the courts, it's lighting and fencing and everything else. So I'm hoping you're looking at it comprehensively.
I will check on that. I know the quote we have is for the courts, but I can definitely add the other 2 to the scope. No problem.
Thank you, Doug. Thanks.
The other thing is Lake Charlotte. Doug, if you could get with me and, you know, you're talking about, you did a whole finding in terms of archaeological. I would love to see what that comes up with. And we are still doing a tour, and we're going to wait until it gets warm, a tour with the community that go through Lake Charlotte. And I just want to remind y'all of that. I've just wrote it down again that maybe we can look at it in April, but we just need to go. And I will look at your study, that study and the article that you just had on the presentation also. So if you could send that to me, I would appreciate it.
Happy to. No problem.
All right. Thank you. That's it.
All right. Thanks much. Anyone else? Questions or comments? All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate your report and all that you are doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Have a good one. All right. Next up on our list is the per Ordinance 20-0-1779, which we passed on January 4th of this year, expanding the Housing Opportunity Bond Program. Councilmember Archibong added an amendment asking the folks from Invest Atlanta to come and update us on that program and how we plan to implement it in the months and years ahead. And so I will hand things off to Dr. Clementich and Alan Ferguson, Don Arnold, and the team to take it from here.
President, and thank you. Thank you very much, Council Chair and all PDHS members. My name is Dr. Eloise Clementich, and it's an honor to be before you again to present our efforts on the Housing Opportunity Bond. I specifically want to thank Alan Ferguson, Don Arnold, for their commitment to this program. It really has made a difference for us. And I'd just also like to recognize Rosalind Rubens, who is also on the phone, should you have any questions. And then for our partners, not only does Invest Atlanta, but we're working very closely with the City of Atlanta, the Atlanta Housing Authority, as key partners in the implementation of the Housing Opportunity Bond. Since your questions are very specific to the next steps forward. I've asked Alan Ferguson if he could walk us through this presentation, and then we're all here to address any questions you may have. With that, Alan Ferguson, if you can take it from here.
All right. Thank you, Eloise, and thank you, CDHS Committee, for allowing us to present today and to talk about the proposed guidelines for the 2021 Housing Opportunity Bond Program. So if we could go to slide number 2. One thing that I really want to highlight is that, this Housing Opportunity Bond is really the next step in a series of actions that are undertaken in partnership with, the City of Atlanta through the Office of the Chief Housing Officer, Terry Lee, as well as, other efforts that have been undertaken, some by Invest Atlanta, some by the Department of City Planning, to kind of all come together to really focus on trying to address the city's affordable workforce housing needs. So, it really kind of begins and kicks off with, the release of the One Atlanta Housing Affordability Action Plan from June 2019. And I'll touch on more specifics of that in a second, but, that's really what called out a variety of actions, a variety of activities that kind of feed into where we are today. That was followed by the release of the One Atlanta Economic Mobility Recovery and Resiliency Plan. Again, that was released in August of last year, August 2020. And as a part of addressing issues around economic mobility, equity, and inclusion in the city, as well as thinking about the City of Atlanta economic recovery, after the COVID-19 environment. You'll find embedded within that plan housing and workforce housing as a key element to advancing the city. And then third, but definitely not least, is the Atlanta City Design Plan for housing, released by the Department of Planning in December of last year, which again, through looking at zoning and land use and design elements, what can be done to increase the availability of housing, especially middle market housing and workforce housing within the city of Atlanta. So really all of these things kind of coming together, in support of not only just creating housing in general in the city, but also, supporting the $1 billion commitment, the pledge to invest $1 billion in affordable workforce housing throughout the city of Atlanta, a combination of both, public and private investment. So if we can go to the next slide, slide 3. Here you see, really a summary, a snapshot of the key elements of the One Atlanta Housing Affordability Action Plan. I call it the HAP plan for short. And there you see called out kind of in the second quadrant, the bottom quadrant to the left of the page, the call for $1 billion. And it asks us to maximize existing funding resources, develop new funding resources, and to increase philanthropic and private investment. So I'm just focusing on the capital part for this particular slide. But you'll see we have been actively pursuing, and by we, I mean the agencies collectively, the city administration, the Office of Housing and Community Development, part of the city's Department of Planning, Atlanta Housing, Atlanta Beltline, and Invest Atlanta have all been working together to try to bring this to fruition. And if you go to slide number 4, please, you will see there that, these efforts are indeed gaining some traction, and they're working. To date, over 6,000 units have been, either created or preserved through our actions. And we're just shy of roughly about $500 million in public agency investment towards housing. But again, this is a plan to create 20,000 units by 2026. So we still have a long way to go. We've got a goal to reach and, gain an additional 14,000 units over the next 5 years. And that's where a tool like the Housing Opportunity Bond, this $100 million that's been proposed, has become so critically important. So if we could actually go to slide number 6. Skipping ahead here momentarily. The Housing Opportunity Bond Program, the structure, really reinforces and emphasizes, the partnership, between all the agencies. So the city of Atlanta, through its general funds, is essentially responsible for paying the bills, paying the debt service on the bonds. And in particular, right now, with this particular bond issuance, I really have to applaud the city administration and in particular the Department of Finance, Roosevelt Council, and John Gaffney for really coming up with a creative structure to allow us to access the capital markets now at such a very low cost without creating an inordinate burden on the city's budget. So they came up with a fantastic structure, this drawdown bond structure that allow us, immediate access to capital at very reasonable rates and relatively very low cost to the city. So, kudos to them. But then you also have, all of our other players, at the Atlanta Housing Authority through the creation of their nonprofit entity, the Atlanta Housing Opportunity, Inc., which really acts as the bridge, the vehicle through which we're able to make this happen. Under Invest Atlanta, the Urban Residential Finance Authority, which is an entity under our umbrella that will issue the bonds. And then, as I noted, AHO entity. That's the pass-through for all of these types of programs. So what are the programs and what are we proposing? If you go to slide number 7, these are the allocated uses that we're anticipating for the $100 million bond issuance. You'll see it's roughly divided into different categories: multifamily loans, single-family loan programs, funds set aside for land and property assemblage, set aside for nonprofits at $15 million, which is the highest set aside for nonprofits that we've done in the history of the Housing Opportunity Bond Program, and then related allocations set aside for program administration and cost of issuance for this facility. And the next slide, slide 8, just kind of gives you a graphic of how all of that breaks out. And I should also mention that in terms of the uses, the owner-occupied rehab program, which has a set aside of $22 million, is the single largest category. We've heard the feedback and we've received the response. Invest Atlanta as the administrator of our current owner-occupied rehab programs, and we understand that that's a very important program to fighting displacement efforts in our city, being able to allow residents to remain in their homes, especially our most vulnerable residents. And so that's really kind of called out as the largest category. And that also feeds into, the kind of the key focus areas and what are the key outcomes that we're trying to achieve with this program. So if you go to slide 9, you'll see that, what we're really trying to do is focus on, addressing the key affordable housing needs in the city according to, the current market considerations and needs. And so that means, supporting efforts that fight displacement, an increased focus and preference for trying to create permanent affordability so that we can invest dollars essentially one time and reap, exponential and continuing benefits from affordability. The preservation of naturally occurring affordable housing. So especially during this pandemic and some of the protections that were provided for housing that was a part of, call it public agency finance, those residents were protected and those landlords, could get access to certain federal resources to allow, those residents to keep from getting displaced, because of evictions, because they couldn't, pay their rents, as well as the landlords could get access to certain resources for support through various PPP loan programs, so that they can maintain operations, while they, were suffering loss of income because their tenants couldn't pay rent. And so that really illuminated, for us, something that we already know, which is there are a lot of properties out there that aren't a part of the, kind of traditional affordable workforce housing ecosystem. But if they were brought into it, they could have taking advantage of those programs, as well as from a policy and public benefit standpoint, you could provide some compliance and some monitoring of those properties to make sure that they're well maintained, they're well kept, and they provide a quality of life experience for our residents. So you'll also see for the first time in the Housing Opportunity Bond program, we're also allocating some funds to fight homelessness, and that'll be in partnership with Partners for Home and the Home First program, continuing their efforts there. And then also funds have been reserved and set aside to support strategic land acquisition. Again, being able to control the land and control the development that happens on that land is, we believe, one of the key strategies towards achieving, long-term and permanent affordability. So let's, unless anyone has any questions, we can start going into some of the proposed program guidelines. So on slide 10, I'm sorry, was there a question?
No, I did take myself off mute, but just to say, go ahead and dive in, and then we'll take questions.
All right, sounds good. All right, so you'll see on slide 10 what we have proposed is our guidelines for our multifamily loan programs, and these are what we're proposing. The funding that we're proposing, rather, for larger properties that are greater than 70 units. You'll see that $15 million has been allocated within the $100 million, to devote towards this program. But really what I like, to focus on are the preferences, because, with our preferences, that's how we're able to prioritize and to focus our efforts, on the outcomes that we're trying to achieve. So we have preferences for those properties that are set aside units at 30% of area median income and below. Those properties that are supporting, long-term and permanent affordability. Properties that are closer to transit and access to transit, because, we understand that if you can lower the housing costs, but also lower transportation costs for our households, you can increase their disposable income and allow them a pathway to a better quality of life. Also, preserving existing units in the city. It costs more and more to build new units. It's still costly, but it's less costly to preserve an existing affordable unit. And so we can keep units from leaving the ecosystem. That's one less unit that we have to fund that's new to create, to bring into the system. So we have preferences there. Income targeting will remain consistent as the last housing opportunity bond issues, where we're targeting our funds to really support units that are at 60% of area median income or less. And then the rent restrictions, which will have rent restrictions that get published annually every year, they're not to exceed the HUD fair market rents. And we publish those annually. In fact, the new area median incomes will probably get released sometime in March. So we'll be updating what the maximum income limits are, and probably have that information available in April for 2021. And then you can see another factor that what we're trying to do and trying to support is the maximum amount of funding per available unit. And so, for units that are achieving deeper affordability, we want to make more funding available, because they, just the math requires that they need a bit more subsidy to make that happen. And then for units that are 31 to 60% AMI, you see we're targeting up to $60,000 per unit there for each affordable unit. The maximum amount of funding per project is up to $1.5 million. That's been consistent with prior issuances, but we're also trying to recognize that, there have been increases in costs in the market, both increases in land costs as well as increases in construction costs. You can go around and ask the development and investment community, they'll verify the same. And so what we're trying to allow for is for the to increase the amount if, developers are pursuing larger properties greater than 200 units, and they're providing that affordability. component, or if they're able to get a more lucrative subsidy, such as getting access to the 9% low-income housing tax credit, which provides significantly more subsidy than the 4% low-income housing tax credit that we typically see, and we're typically able to take advantage of in the city of Atlanta. We also scale that down because they're receiving a larger amount, and so we cap that funding at $1 million. And again, these are proposed guidelines. At the end of the presentation, I'll talk about kind of next steps in our process in terms of socializing these, and that's where I really want to speak to, and that's proposed guidelines. We can go to the next slide, continuing multifamily, slide number 11. You'll see that we have caps, if you will, in terms of the maximum amount of funding based on the total development cost. That's to really kind of ensure we don't get into a situation or scenario where we're providing funding for 100% of the development per se. And then you have the criteria regarding minimum set-asides, rates, and also term and amortization period. And so one of the things that you may notice is that we increased the allowable term and amortization period, and that's really to align with some federal funding sources that allow for terms up to 40 years. In almost every instance, the funding that we provide through the Housing Opportunity Bond Program is subordinated funding, and that there's a second lien or sometimes even a third lien placed against the property. And typically federally funded permanent financing programs require that subordinate layers of funding have terms that go beyond their terms. And so that's why you see us allowing for terms up to 45 years. We don't necessarily have a challenge or issue with that from a guideline perspective, because as long as the funding is outstanding, the affordability requirements are outstanding. So the longer term is just another pathway for us for longer affordability on these projects that we fund. So if we go to slide 12, we'll actually see, really a new carve out, a new program that we're offering with this Housing Opportunity Bond issuance, which is for small multifamily loans. And this is for projects that are less than 70 units. One of the reasons why we set the threshold at 70 units or less for small multifamily is because roughly about 70 units is where the land economics and the development costs are really below the threshold that makes taxes and bond financing, financially feasible. And so for those projects, because there are a lot of areas, within the city that can support essentially small multifamily development, so how do you get them financed other by conventional means, but also encourage affordable housing? We're now trying to make this tool, make this program available to support small multifamily development, as well as preservation and preservation opportunities. A number of existing naturally occurring affordable housing is locked into small multifamily developments. Properties that are 50 units and less, some properties, that are 30 units and less. And so we want to be able to offer a tool, offer a resource to allow those existing property owners to, provide, improvements, some moderate to light rehab on their properties, to, really upgrade the quality and modernize the units, but as well as bring them, again, this whole strategy around bringing them into the ecosystem where there can be compliance and monitoring and maintenance, if you will, for long-term affordability. So here you see some of the same preferences as outlined within the multifamily loan product. But you see, because we're talking about smaller properties, the maximum amount per unit has been capped up to $1 million per project. And a total amount of $8 million has been set aside for this particular category. And if we go to the next slide, slide 13, you see outline essentially the same type of criteria there as the multifamily gap financing. in terms of the length of term, the rates that can be inspected, and the minimum set aside number of units. I should also mention, and I failed to mention this on the first slide, that we've actually increased the minimum set aside units under the 2017 Housing Opportunity Bond issuance, and actually prior in 2007, the minimum set aside was 20% of units must be set aside as affordable. We've increased that to 30% of the units must be set aside for affordable. So again, we're looking to get more affordable units out of our production with this particular issuance. If we go to slide 14, that's where we discuss permanent supportive housing. Permanent supportive housing, a total of $10 million has been allocated to this type of transitional housing for the formerly homeless. The criteria and preference criteria lines up with the criteria that's offered through the Home First program. We've been in touch with Partners for Home, with Catherine Marchman, their executive director, to make sure that she's engaged and she's aware of what we're proposing. And so we haven't heard from Catherine yet, but we're including her in our work sessions going forward. And so if there are any modifications or comments that comes from the stakeholders, as well as the team over at Partners for Home, we'll be making updates accordingly. But you can see, because we're talking about permanent supportive housing, which typically serves a lower average median income AMI level that we see in other projects. The income targeting is lower, targeted at 50% of AMI or less. And then the amount of funding is higher, up to $70,000 per unit for these projects. A maximum contribution that can be made to any single project will be $1.5 million. On slide 15, again, you see continuation of our standards and terms and our guidelines that we're proposing, which pretty much mirror what we would do for multifamily projects. Going to slide number 16, we talk about our single-family development loan projects. And so the budget allocation for this particular category has been established at $4 million. Again, the set aside for single-family development is we're really trying to focus on trying to get to deeper levels of home ownership. So for this particular program, we have set aside for households at 60% of area median income or less. The preservation of existing single-family residential units. A lot of our neighborhoods, a lot of our communities, even though there's been a lot of investment activity in the city of Atlanta, we still have swaths of residential neighborhoods within the city of Atlanta where you have a significant stock of vacant and blighted housing. And so we want to provide a tool to enable developers and investors and mission-oriented organizations to pursue those types of opportunities. We also have a preference for permanent affordability with single-family development, and that can be accomplished either through community land trusts, a ground lease, or some other deferred loan type of structure. So we're allowing for some flexibility in that area. We also allow for single-family rental, as long as there are attached services for transition to home ownership. That is one of the key points of flexibility, because we do recognize that in some neighborhoods, the cost of construction for single family can sometimes exceed what the market can bear in those neighborhoods and those geographies. And so we want to allow for some flexibility for single family rental with a transition to eventual home ownership. And we've actually piloted that type of initiative in the 2017 Housing Opportunity Bond initiative, and it's actually working out fairly well for us in a relatively short time. Again, proximity, to transit, and then also, being supportive of the Atlanta City Design for Housing. We're also creating a preference for housing units that are created that include at least, one accessory dwelling unit. So we really want to, try to, support, policy and land use zoning, and other initiatives that are all aimed at creating and increasing the amount of affordable workforce housing, in the city. And so by including this preference in the single family space, we look at that as one of the avenues, that we can use to kind of uplift and support that policy. So very, pleased with that. And then also, green sustainable building, practices, really supporting, not just, building new homes, but making sure homes are built with sustainable materials, there's quality of construction, as well as there are definitely, energy saving features and green features, to those properties, that increase the overall, availability of healthy living. And we also, I should mention that we also have similar standards in our multifamily loan products, but we're specifically calling them out here in the single family space. So income targeting, from a rental standpoint, because it is a different, product, targeting 80% of AMI or less. And then with the for sale products targeting 120% of, area median income or less. And that 120% of AMI also corresponds with down payment assistance programs offered through Invest Atlanta, also offered through Atlanta Housing, and also through partnership with Housing and Community Development through home funding received by the city, the AHOW program that we manage, making sure that for homes that get built where we can find potential home buyers, we're also providing additional tools and resources that also support them actually getting into the home. So trying to build homes that are at affordable price points, but also get homeowners into those homes, making basically increasing the opportunity for affordability. Maximum funding per unit up to $70,000 per unit, and again to support permanent affordability, which is a different model. We're offering up to $100,000 per unit in funding for units that are targeted for permanent affordability. Again, trying to support those efforts in the city. And then maximum amount per project is up to $500,000. That's to allow for rolling and revolving structures. And then we also are reserving the right to potentially increase the amount of funding if additional affordable units or deeper levels of affordability are obtained. And so with every transaction, I should mention, we go through a thorough underwriting, evaluation, and financial feasibility review process. And so we'll be doing that with all of these projects, and where situations warrant that we go beyond this, we'll evaluate those opportunities and consider going beyond. Next slide, please, slide 17. So the minimum set asides for single family development, because it is a different type of product type and isn't necessarily produced en masse, similar to multifamily, the minimum set asides are at least 20% of the project units must be set aside as affordable. Also, the minimum project size, the overall project size, is a lower threshold. For nonprofits, we're proposing minimum project size of 3 units. For for-profits, they have to have a minimum project size of 5 units. And the reason why our thresholds are that small is this is a tool we also want to make available and make sure that it's accessible to the nonprofits that are operating in the single-family space here in the city of Atlanta, as well as small developers and small investors who are currently doing this work and, quite frankly, doing it well. And they want to provide affordability, but because of their sources of financing are typically higher cost financing, they're almost kind of prevented from providing units at an affordable level. And so being able to provide this lower cost capital to those developers that kind of fit within that category, we think is key to supporting urban infill development here in the city. Slide number 18, please. This provides a snapshot of our single-family homeowner programs. Again, we're very happy and very pleased to offer down payment assistance through the 2021 Housing Opportunity Bond, as well as I mentioned, owner-occupied rehab loans. And the set-aside there, as I mentioned earlier, is $22 million. The down payment assistance program, we think is going to operate pretty much akin to similar down payment assistance programs that we've offered in the past. The owner-occupied rehab program, again, we're looking at this as the Atlanta Heritage Program, kind of version 2.0. And again, looking to deploy a program provider type model where we have program providers that will work with the residents, help them develop the scope and the priorities of repairs, and also facilitate the construction on those homes. And the preferences, again, will be categorized regarding seniors, disabled head of households, veteran head of households, and low-income households, those households that have less than 60% of area median income are going to be preferred participants in the program. And again, with owner-occupied rehab, we're looking at providing up to $30,000 per home per unit in home repair costs on that. If we can go to slide 19. This is our slide for land and property acquisition. And so you can see that there's $8 million that's allocated towards this particular category. And these are loans that will be made available to the city and its public sector agencies to acquire land or vacant property for affordable housing development. And there are going to be clear project preferences here, set asides for households at 50% of area median income and below, a preference for permanent affordability, and again, a preference for locations that are in close proximity to transit. The funds can be leveraged to acquire property that's either going to be for rental or for sale, according to the income targets set. And we're also allowing for maximum amount per project. We're proposing up to $5 million or $70,000 per proposed restricted unit. So this is not intended, I should say, to kind of fully fund 100% a land acquisition on behalf of one of the agencies. However, what it is intended to do is, provide, again, another layer of capital, soft capital, that can be used to tie up to acquiring a property, either undeveloped land or an existing property that can be redeveloped or renovated or rehabbed and put back into productive use. And it's intended to be just a tranche of the capital available that can be used with other sources, either private sources or philanthropic sources, to affect a property acquisition strategy. And again, because we're using kind of public dollars in this space, we're looking for a minimum set aside of 50% of the units targeted towards affordable workforce housing. And the terms are going to be shorter because this is not funding that's intended to support land banking type of activity, where a property may be held for several years before there's an opportunity to kind of bring it back to a higher and better or more productive use. We want to see this funding used towards properties that, in the real estate development cycle sense, are going to be activated quickly. So looking for properties that can get activated within, less than 2 years, and have these funds repaid back and replenished so that we can go back out and support more acquisition activity. Excuse me. And so, that's essentially it. You'll see the remaining slides. There's appendix there giving further descriptions of the programs that I just mentioned and reviewed, as well as information on what the 2020 limits are for area median incomes, targeted maximum price per household, and maximum rents. As I mentioned, those numbers get updated annually, and we're due to see an update in those with the new income numbers coming out in March, and we think probably in April, no later than April of this year, we'll have the updated rents and income, and maximum home price limits available in publication on our site and distributed with all of our other materials. So with that, very happy to answer any questions, receive comments, receive feedback on this. I should mention that we do plan and actually have scheduled to go out and have several stakeholder work sessions. The first work session is scheduled for March 3rd, and that's going to be a general stakeholder work session where we're going to review these program guidelines, request feedback, comment, and kind of take all of that information in. The second work session is scheduled for March 9th. And these meetings are going to be held virtually. I should also add via Zoom. And the second work session is going to be scheduled for March 9th. And that work session is specifically targeting nonprofits and small developers. And so we'll be there to answer questions and receive feedback from those particular stakeholder groups for that second work session. And then the final work session we're anticipating is going to be on March 17th. And that's where we're, after we gather all the feedback, kind of taking a moment to digest it and incorporate it, really come back out with what we think is going to be our proposed set of final guidelines. And so all of those meetings are scheduled. You're hearing it for the first time here on this call. They have been posted on our website, investatlanta.com. If you go to investatlanta.com/about-us/events, the registration links are open as of this afternoon. And so we'll be having those sessions and looking forward to productive conversations with our stakeholders.
All right. Thank you very much for that update. One comment for you and for council staff, I suppose. Councilman Brown had to depart this meeting, and so he will not be with us for the rest of the afternoon. But before doing so, wanted to say that he was in full support of the presentation as you laid it out for us. So we will get that on the record. Colleagues, any other questions or comments for Mr. Ferguson? All right. Go forth and prosper. Best of luck. Thanks for all of your work and Ms. Arnold as well and Dr. Clementine for getting us across the finish. Well, getting us to where we are now. Lots more work to do in the months and years ahead. So thank you all.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you to the council members for all of your support for this effort. We really appreciate it.
For sure. All right, team. Next up is our regular agenda and ordinance for second reading. Ms. Colandini, will you kick us off?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Item number 1, 21-0-0094, CEP-20-001, an ordinance by Community Development Human Services Committee to adopt Atlanta Beltline Sub-Area 3 Master Plan, the Atlanta Beltline Sub-Area 3 Master Plan update to amend the 2016 Comprehensive Development Plan by incorporating by reference said plan and for other purposes and to use WNY Council District 1.
Thank you much. Ms. Smith, we're going to make a motion to hold for the CDP hearing.
Yes, please. Motion to hold.
All right. I will second that. Please open the vote.
Vote is open.
Mr. Bond, are you back yet? All right. Let's mark Mr. Bond as away. Ms. Archibong, how would you like to vote?
In affirmative, thank you.
Sure.
Vote is closed.
All right. 5 yeas, 0 nays. That item is held. Next item.
Next item is number 2, 21-0-0095, an ordinance by Community Development Human Services Committee amending the FY 2021 budget intergovernmental grant fund budget by adding to anticipations and appropriations in the amount of $583,956.00, increasing the budget amount authorized by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for the City of Atlanta Section 8 Moderate Rehabilitation Program for the Santa Fe Villas Housing Complex and for other purposes.
All right, colleagues, any questions or comments? Or Ms. Shepherd, would you like to make a motion?
Yes, I'll motion to approve, but I do have a question. Is there a companion paper that's going to go along with this today?
There is. It is on the held agenda. It's item number 28. And I was going to do all those at the end, but we can do it. I think we can do it right now if you want to.
Paper. Yeah, if you could pull that one and do both of them, and I do have a question for the department.
Okay. Ms. Pulangini, is that allowed? Can you go ahead and sound 28 and we can take them together?
Yes, I'll sound that item. One moment, please.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Because there are two different types of papers, we'll have to take them separately. We could take that one right after this, if you'd like.
Okay. We will do that. Ms. Shepherd, why don't you ask your question?
From the department, that paper, the resolution is two different amounts of money, and I'm trying to get clarity on the difference between that paper, the resolution, and this ordinance in terms of the funding amount. Is that two different buckets of money? Can someone answer that for me?
Ms. Thompson, are you here?
So no one from the grant department is here?
Well, now, I know they're here. I think we just may need to unmute them.
One moment, let me check.
Okay. And if not, Ms. Thompson, Deputy COO Burks may also be on the line. Yeah, if we can unmute Ms. Burks, she is also here.
One moment, please.
And Mr. Westmoreland, if you don't want to hold things up, we can hold that until the end and come back with both of those.
Councilmember Westmoreland.
Yes, ma'am. There you are.
Hi, this is LaShondra Burks, Deputy Chief Operating Officer for the City of Atlanta. Thank you for the opportunity to try to answer Councilmember Shepherd's question, and thank you, Councilmember Shepherd, for the question. So the item that is up now, which is 21-0-0095, is actually for $583,956. This actually covers the rent and the administrative costs for Santa Fe Villas. So it is us kind of receiving this funding in order to pay the rent and the administrative costs. And then the resolution 21R-3147, that's in Hill, that we're hoping to get moved from Hill, in the amount of $481,200 is the actual rent amount to be paid to the owners of Santa Fe Villas.
So one is for the rent, the actual rent of the tenants there, and the other is the rent. The cost that goes to URDC, the urban URDC. I think that's
in the city. The city. Mm-hmm. So the 583 is inclusive of 481,200 for the rent that goes to RDC, and the remainder is the administrative cost that comes to the city for administering the fund.
Okay. Thank you. That's the clarity.
You're more than welcome. Okay.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Motion is to approve, Mr. Westmoreland.
Thank you much. I will second that motion.
The vote is open.
All right. I think everyone who is here has voted.
Vote is closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays. That item is favorable. Let's go ahead and do 28 while we're on the topic.
Okay, item number 28, 21-R-3147, a resolution by Community Development and Human Services Committee authorizing the mayor or her designee on behalf of the City of Atlanta to enter into a housing assistance payments contract with the Urban Residential Development Corporation in an amount not to exceed $481,200.00 for the purpose of paying rental subsidies on behalf of 100 units for low-income, formerly homeless individuals at Santa Fe Villas, pursuant to the Section 8 Moderate Rehabilitation Program sponsored by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and for the purposes.
I'll make a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Westmoreland, second by Shepherd.
Vote is open.
And closed. 5 yeas, 0 nays. That item is adopted as well. Next up.
Item number 3, 21-0-0096. There's a substitute in your packet which modifies the caption slightly. Would the committee like to bring the substitute forward before I read in the caption?
Yes, please. I will make that motion. Is there a second?
Second, Hillis.
Motion by Westmoreland, second by Hillis.
The vote is open. Vote is closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays. The substitute is before us.
A substitute ordinance by Community Development and Human Services Committee to adopt the 2020 Development Impact Fee Study and Ordinance Update CIE Amendment in compliance with the requirements of the Georgia Planning Act of 1889 and for the purposes.
All right. We have got Deputy Commissioner Sidifel as well as Ms. Talon and Ms. Hope and maybe Mr. Futrell if he is needed. And a presentation to go along with this as well. I'll hand it off to whoever would like to go first.
Good afternoon, council members. Tiffany Cope, who is our Impact Fee Coordinator, will be going to the presentation for us this afternoon. So with that, Tiffany, would you like to get started?
Thank you, Janity. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tiffany Cope, Impact Fee Coordinator with the Department of City Planning. Today we will cover the Impact Fee Study and Ordinance Update. We will provide an overview of the program, discuss the need for an update, and review final recommendations. Next slide, please. So what is the purpose of an Impact Fee program? When there's new development in an area, it increases the number of people who will now live, work, or play in that area, inevitably creating a greater demand on public facilities. Facilities such as transportation or roads, recreational facilities, and public safety services. And what are impact fees? An impact fee is a one-time fee imposed by a local government on a new or proposed development project to pay for all or a portion of the cost of providing public services to the new development. Impact fees are essential not only because they help fund the supply of public facilities to meet the demand created by a new development, they also help to alleviate some of the financial burden to taxpayers of covering the developmental costs. Impact fees, of course, also creates an additional stream of revenue for the city. However, the expenditure of impact fees must adhere to several guidelines put into place under the Georgia Development Impact Fee Act. In particular, impact fees can only be used on improvements that expand system capacity and cannot be used to maintain existing infrastructure. Next slide, please. So why does the city need to update the existing impact fee program? The chief reason behind this update is that Atlanta's fees have not changed in over 25 years. Atlanta's impact fee program was adopted back in 1993. As you can see from the fee chart, Atlanta is well below the national average and well below our peers around the nation. Even in relation to nearby jurisdictions such as Roswell, Alpharetta, and Sandy Springs, you can see our fees do not adequately align with our current growth and development. Next slide, please. The 2020 impact fee update falls into three main categories. Number one, fee levels. Fee levels are updated in the new study, of course, because current levels are based on 1993's land use, construction costs, and scope. Land use types are updated to reflect current types in the city. Transportation service area is reduced from citywide into three smaller service areas, which will align with the park service area. And currently, fee levels vary by service area. However, this update creates the uniformity of fees citywide. Number two, policy. Methodologies are updated to expand the scope of what improvements can be funded to meet the needs of a growing city. For example, park scope is expanded to include spend for not only land acquisition, but also for improvements such as gyms, multi-use trails, and picnic facilities. Transportation scope is expanded to enable spend on collector roads and sidewalks where permissible. The study also recommends updating the affordable housing and economic development exemption language. And category number three, program administration. This update also aims to improve transparency with expanded annual reporting and engaging the advisory committee to evaluate impact fee funded projects for any perceived inequities. Next slide. As part of this update to improve program administration, in 2019, Council reconstituted the Development Impact Fee Advisory Committee. The committee was reestablished to assist the city with evaluating and updating our current ordinance and to ensure with the update that the city improves transparency of the program, as well as to advise on fee structure and report on any perceived inequities. The advisory committee consists of 5 members who represent the development communities and private sector. And the committee members include Malloy Peterson as the chair, Kevin Green from Midtown Alliance, Jim Brown with the JWB Properties, Stacy McCoy with SciComm Infrastructure Services, and Roderick Teachy with Wingate Companies. Next slide. As part of the advisory committee's role to advise on impact fee policy decisions, they recently met to vote on recommendations that required finalizing. Those recommendations include timeline for adopting a new fee study and associated ordinance, potential phasing or percentage adoption of recommended fee levels, determine guidelines for grandfathered developments already in progress, select preferred single-family fee structure options, develop reporting structure to improve transparency on proximity, and finalize affordability and economic development language. So with that, next we will cover each recommendation. We will review the staff's preliminary recommendations and note if any updates were made to those recommendations, as well as review the advisory committee vote for each. Next slide, please. Recommendation number 1, preferred timeline to implement any fee changes associated with development impact fees. The staff's preliminary recommendation is to implement the updated ordinance or fee change 6 months from date of adoption, and the advisory committee voted in favor of this recommendation. Next slide. Recommendation number 2, preferred time frame to phase in 100% of the adopted fee levels for development impact fees. The preliminary recommendation is to phase in the fees over 2 years with 3 increases in that time frame, with the first increase taking effect the first year at 50% of the rate set forth, 75% in the second year, and at 100% in the third year and beyond. The advisory committee did not vote in favor of this recommendation. Next slide, please. This chart demonstrates an example of phasing in the total fee at varying percentages over different time horizons. You'll see the staff recommendation indicated by the red marker, which phases in the rate set forth, beginning at 50%, then increasing to that 75%, then 100% previously mentioned. Next slide, please. This chart shows the second option of the phase-in approach using the rate change. So the difference between the current rate and the proposed new rate divided over the number of increases for each time horizon. Next slide. Recommendation number 3. How should we deal with near-term projects in progress that may be financially impacted by rate changes? The staff recommendation is not to develop any special guidelines for projects already in progress, since a 6-month notice will be given prior to implementation of the first fee increase. And the advisory committee voted in favor of this recommendation. Next slide. Recommendation number 4, preferred single-family home rate structure. Rates based on square footage or a single flat rate for single-family homes. The preliminary recommendation was for the flat rate fee structure. However, taking a much deeper dive into the pros and cons of each approach, the staff has updated their recommendation in favor of the tiered rate structure. The advisory committee voted in favor of the initial recommendation of the flat rate structure. Next slide. Recommendation number 5, suggestions to improve transparency of the program. The preliminary recommendation is for the Department of Finance to provide the impact fee annual report to the mayor and council by June 30th of each year. And the portion of the annual report relating to transportation impact fees will also be referred to the advisory committee for their reporting on any perceived inequities. And lastly, the 3 service areas will be used to conduct a distribution analysis to better understand the proximity relationship of impact fee collections and expenditures. And the advisory committee voted in favor of this recommendation. Next slide. Recommendation number 6, changes to the affordable housing exemption language. The preliminary recommendation is to extend a 20% exemption based on the presented guidelines, and the development must be affordable for 20 years. The staff has updated their position on this recommendation. I'm still in favor of a 20% exemption. However, the development must now be affordable for 10 years. And the advisory committee voted in favor of the initial recommendation of a 20% exemption and affordable for 20-year standard. Next slide. Recommendation 6A, should affordable housing exemptions apply to the entire development or just the affordable portion? The preliminary recommendation is the affordable housing exemption should only apply to the affordable portion, and the advisory committee voted in favor of that recommendation. Next slide. And finally, recommendation 6B, changes to the preliminary economic development exemption language. The preliminary recommendation provided a 100% exemption based on the presented guidelines. However, staff has updated their recommendation to align the criteria of this exemption with Invest Atlanta and to match the affordable housing language to provide a 20% exemption. The Development Impact Fee Advisory Committee voted in favor of the preliminary recommendation. Thank you for your time, and I yield the floor back over to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much for your presentation and for your work on this over the last several years. I'm very excited to get this to where we are right now. A couple of clarifications and for both the body and folks who may be watching. One, I wanted to thank Councilmember Shepherd for her advocacy around revisions to recommendation 4 and spelling out a tiered approach to impact fees based on the square footage of a home, so that homes that are smaller, would be able to be more affordable in line with our affordability goals and also a desire to make the city more dense. And then second, I want to make sure everyone is clear on recommendations 6 and 6B, that there was some conversation last week during the work session around the concept of if and when exemptions are awarded as it relates to impact fees, that the full fee still has to be paid, and that it would require the city to identify a revenue stream for projects that are eligible for the exemptions, either by creating middle wage jobs on the south and west sides of town or affordable housing projects. Neither of those have an existing or identified funding stream yet. And so want to make sure that folks know that that is a goal for the future, but not something that would immediately come into being. With that, I'm going to hand things off to Mr. Hillis with the first question or comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, planning, for this presentation. It's been a long time coming. This was initially got on my radar back before I was a council member, and reading articles about how far Atlanta was behind in impact fees and how places in the metro like Cherokee County had much higher impact fees than even the city of Atlanta. That shows when we're out, if people are asking questions about like we can't have more transportation projects and why we have 80-year-old fire stations and a police academy and fire academy that's currently in deplorable condition, and the opportunity for more parks and green space. And a lot of that goes back to impact fees, which have been the same since they were adopted in the early 90s. So I know there have been a number of studies over the years, no action taken, but time is certainly now, and I'm looking forward to adopting this and bringing us up to speed where we should be and getting those additional dollars that are needed for those important projects. So definitely glad we're here at this point, and that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have been rejoined by Mr. Bond. I wanted to acknowledge that. And then, colleagues, I wanted to bring to your attention that the substitute currently before us contemplate the increase that is outlined on page 9 of the slide deck, that the 3 increases over a 2-year time frame. The first increase would take place in September of this year, the second in September of 2022, the third in September of 2023. And so wanted to see if any folks had questions or comments on that aspect of it or on anything else at all before I ask for a motion. All right. Anybody want to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve, Hillis.
Second, Shepherd.
All right. Motion by Hillis, second by Shepherd.
Vote is open.
Mr. Bond, how would you like to vote?
Aye.
Vote is closed.
All right. 6 yeas, 0 nays. That item is favorable and will be referred to FEC, where it will be heard, discussed, and deliberated on tomorrow.
Mr. Chair, if you could make a motion to refer, please.
I'd be happy to. Motion to refer. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Westmoreland, second by Bond. Please open that vote.
Vote is open. Vote is closed.
All right. Thank you much. Next item.
Item number 4.
Thank you very much. 27 years in the making. Go team. Thank you.
Item number 4, 21-0-0097, an ordinance by Community Development Human Services Committee authorizing the mayor to accept and sign a supplemental grant agreement with the United States Environmental Protection Agency in the amount of $375,000 for the Brownfields Revolving Loan Fund Program, amending the 2020 Intergovernmental Grant Fund budget by adding to anticipations and appropriations in the amount of $375,000 and for other purposes.
Any questions or comments? All right, I'll make a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Westmoreland, second by Bond. Please open that vote.
The vote is open. Vote is closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays. That item is favorable. Next item.
Number 5, 21-0-0098, an ordinance by Community Development Human Services Committee authorizing the mayor or her designee to enter into a memorandum of agreement with Sweet Auburn Works, Inc., East Atlanta Community Association, Inc., and West End Merchants Coalition to support the extension of the Atlanta Main Street Fellowship Program for the purpose of making a donation in the amount not to exceed $7,500.00 each to Sweet Auburn, East Atlanta, and West End, and to authorize the chief financial officer or his designee to transfer 3 separate donations to Sweet Auburn, East Atlanta, and West End in an amount not to exceed $7,500.00 as a charitable donation pursuant to the City's Code of Ordinances, Section 6-306. All payments will be paid from the account listed herein and for the purposes.
Any questions or comments? All right, I'll make a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Westmoreland, second by Bond. Please open that vote.
Vote is open. The vote is closed.
Yeas, 0 nays. That item is favorable. Next item.
Item number 6, 21-0-0109, CDP-21-012, an ordinance by Councilmember Marcy Collier Overstreet to amend the land use element of the City of Atlanta 2016 Comprehensive Development Plan so as to redesignate property known as 3430 Cascade Road from the single-family residential land use category to the mixed-use low-density category, and for the purposes NPUI Council District 11, C-21-014. There's an amendment in your packet which attaches the housing impact statement.
I will make a motion to amend before we hold for the public hearing. Is there a second on the motion to amend?
Second, Hillis.
Motion by Westmoreland, second by Hillis.
Vote is open.
Mr. Bond?
Aye.
6 yeas, 0 nays. The item is amended, and I will now make a motion to hold. Is there a second?
Second, Hillis.
Motion by Westmoreland, second by Hillis. Please open that vote. Mr. Bond?
Aye.
Thank you.
The vote is closed.
Yeas, 0 nays. That item is held. Next item.
Our next item is number 7, 21-R-3207, resolution by Councilmember Carlos Smith, amending the resolution 20-R-4066, which was adopted by the Atlanta City Council on August 3rd, 2020, and approved by Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms on August 11th, 2020, which authorized the mayor, on behalf of the City of Atlanta, to enter into an intergovernmental agreement with the Fulton County City of Atlanta Land Bank Authority to accept title to certain properties and to reconvey title to such properties to Invest Atlanta in accordance with the IGA, authorizing the city to direct that deeds in lieu of foreclosure to certain properties be issued to LBA on behalf of the city, authorizing the mayor to execute the necessary quitclaim deeds to convey certain properties to the LBA for development, redevelopment purposes in accordance with the IGA and for other purposes.
We need to hold this, so I'm going to make a motion to hold.
Motion by Smith, excuse me. Second. Second by Bond.
The vote is open. Vote is closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays. Mr. Hillis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was looking through the stack here. Is there a list of properties attached to this? And if not, I would be pretty proud of that.
Yeah, so it will need to be amended at some point to include the IGA, and we can make sure that it includes a list of properties as well and get you that as soon as possible.
Can you get that for me also? This is Shepherd. I would like to see that list also.
Yeah, I'll make sure everybody gets a copy of it. All right, good deal. All right, on to held items. We have 2 left. One is number 13. Will you sound that, please, Ms. Blondini?
Yes, one moment, please. Okay, item number 13, 20-0-1656. An ordinance by Councilmembers Andre Dickens, Matt Westmoreland, Jennifer N. Ide, Amira Froki, Antonio Brown, Michael Julian Bond, and Joyce M. Shepherd, as substituted and amended by Community Development Human Services Committee to provide for the regulation and taxation of short-term rentals within the city of Atlanta and for other purposes.
All right, colleagues, so we have to do a little legislative moving around on this item. We need to send it forward, or I'm going to make a motion to send it forward with no recommendation so that we can have the previously advertised public hearing on this item on Monday at the full council meeting. And then at that point, the chief sponsor of this, Mr. Dickens, has indicated a desire to refer it back to committee for a couple more weeks of conversation with the members of this body and of full council before we take action in March. So with all of that as the backdrop, I'm going to make a motion to move this forward with no recommendation.
I'm sorry, Mr. Westmoreland. I don't understand why we have to do that again. Can you go back over that one more time and why we having to do that?
Yep, because that was my question yesterday. Because we advertised a public hearing when we adopted the fee schedule several cycles ago. That kicked into motion I believe it's a 45-day period, and then there was a public hearing noticed in the newspaper for Monday. And so because it's been noticed, my understanding from law, and Amber Robinson is on the call if we want to hear from them, is that we need to move the paper forward so that it will be in front of us to have the public hearing on Monday, but it is not ready to be adopted yet. And so we're going to move it back to committee after the public hearing and check off that requirement as it relates to the fee study. And then we will have a conversation about the paper itself at the next CDHS meeting on March 9th.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure. All right. So I've got a motion to move forward with no recommendation. Anyone else have a comment or question, or can I get a second?
Second, Hill.
All right. Motion by Westmoreland, second by Bond.
The vote is open.
The vote is closed. 5 yeas, 0 nays, 1 abstention from Councilmember Archibald. On to item number 17.
Item number 17, 20-0-1708, CDP-20-037, an ordinance by Community Development Human Services Committee to amend the land use element of the 2016 Atlanta Comprehensive Development Plan so as to redesignate property located at 552 Boulevard Place Northeast from the low-density residential land use designation to the medium-density residential land use designation and for other purposes, C-20-064 NPUM, Council District 2.
Thank you much. I spoke with Mr. Froki this morning, who informed me that he would like there to be a motion to approve for this item, and so I will do that. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Westmoreland, second by Bond.
Vote is open. Vote is closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays. That item is favorable. That is our final item, since we've taken number 28 already. Colleagues, any questions or comments or announcements? All right. Ms. Smith.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. The motion. Motion by Smith, second by Bond. On unanimous consent, we stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Good meeting. Thank you.